There are leaders in the world who are made for impact.
Imagine that you're in a home that's going up ablaze and it's your job to go save a life or to save the life of one of your comrades. How critical do you think integrity is in that moment? When you start training and developing that muscle in an activity that's not life or death, that's not a high stress environment, it becomes your go-to skill and you'll do it naturally. So we're going to train it here where it's not as critical so that when it matters, it's already part of who you are.
I'm Gretchen Schott, and this is Made for Impact, a show for leaders who want to leave a lasting impact on their organizations, their teams, and their lives.
My guest today is Amy Jones. Amy is a business advisor at Cultivate Advisors, where she helps business owners see what's missing in their businesses that would make the difference for them and their personal goals. Amy knows firsthand the excitement and the fear of owning your own business. She founded Superior Renovated Homes, a real estate flipping company, in 2015. During her 5 years there, she drove over $18 million in sales. Amy's also a third-degree black belt and will be traveling to Korea to compete in the International Taekwondo Tournament. She's also a published author, and you can check out her book, 90-Day Turnaround, Increase Profit and Revenue. I think you're going to love her very pragmatic approach to coaching and servant leadership. Take a listen. All right, Amy, thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait for our listeners to hear your story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me in.
I'm so excited that I'm getting you because I know you have some big plans coming up later this summer. But before I talk about that, tell our listeners a little bit about you, like what you do in your free time, what you like to do, where you work, all that stuff.
Sure. So I am a business advisor with Cultivate Advisors. In my free time, I train in Taekwondo. I am a published author, and I've done lots and lots of things over the years, including flipping 13 restaurants from lowest profitability to highest profitability. I flipped over 1,000 properties in real estate. Real estate's kind of my jam. That's the major stuff, really.
You have such a passion for that. I have watched those flip the house, flip the business shows on HGTV, and I'm always like, it's so stressful. Like, it's entertaining for me to watch, but I'm grateful that's never been my job. But you're like, that's my jam.
It's so much fun. It's so cool when you walk into something and you can see the vision of what it's supposed to become and then put it in place. And then it's so cool to walk into a condemned house and then sell it as a fully renovated property. It's awesome to walk into a restaurant and see it in breakdown. And, you have 30 to 50 employees that hate coming to work and then get to a position where they love coming to work. Like, it's just such a beautiful moment.
I'd love to have you share a little bit about your journey as a leader, and who would you say is someone that's altered your life?
I would say the biggest person that's altered my life is my dad. And I know that's so cliche. I'll tell you the story of the moment that it happened. So I'm 16 years old, I'm laying in bed and I'm super sick. And the time to go to school is starting to come. At this point, I had a car, I was driving myself. And he comes and he opens the door and he's like, Amy, it's time to go to school. And I turn over and in my sick voice, I say, I don't feel like it. And he just looks at me and he gets so frustrated in that moment. He says, Amy, it's not what you can do when you feel like it. It's what you can do when you don't. And he slammed the door. Now, what he didn't realize, I didn't feel like it because I was so sick. It wasn't that I didn't want to go. It's that I didn't feel like it. But he thought that I meant I didn't feel like it. Like I just didn't want to go.
I'm really going, like the thing I hear all the time from my kids.
But that moment, even my children now, my kids now are 13 and 11, and it's our mantra. It's not what you can do when you feel like it. It's what you can do when you don't. And there are so many days that I woke up and I didn't feel good, or I didn't feel like it, or I didn't want to, but I'd get up and I'd take the steps anyway. So it's fascinating that that moment of frustration has literally shaped my life.
Did you go to school sick that day?
No, I did not.
Okay, good. Because I know everyone it was like, oh my gosh, did he just make her go sick?
I did not go to school that day. And we did have a conversation about it later. And he realized that I was physically ill. It wasn't a mental conversation, it was a physical one. And he definitely agreed with me at that point. But it was just the response and then the response to the response and just how it came out and what he perceived. And so that's also shaped a lot of how I parent my kids, is really taking the time to understand what they're communicating versus what I think they're communicating and responding to that instead.
And I want to talk more about, because when you and I caught up a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this nonprofit that you started with your dad. Do you want to share a little bit about that story for our listeners?
So it's not a nonprofit. It is a for-profit. It's called Smart Mentor Systems.
That's it. Yes. I was like, mentor. Is there something about mentors?
It's all background development right now. So we created that in 2005. We went to a seminar and the seminar leader said, hey, go back to your room and take time with this exercise and write down your ideal day at work and your ideal day of play. And my dad took this like for hours. He just sat with a notepad and a pencil and just wrote it out. And really what it came to was that it's so hard to find the people who will really teach you versus, especially today, we're 20 years later, it's even more noisy today. Like it's just marketing versus what are you really giving? What is your cause? What are you standing for? What difference are you making? Versus, hey, I'm selling you this thing. So we're building in the background books that are short books that teach you a specific skill from somebody who's vetted. You can't pay to be published with us. We're building a website where it'll be more like kind of like a Yelp review, but for mentors. And then we'll start sharing like, hey, here's somebody you can go to. You want to learn about sales? Here's our top 5 salespeople. You want to learn how to speak on stage? Here's our top 5. Whatever the skill set you're looking for, you're trying to develop relationships, build communication, learn how to negotiate, how to be a powerful influencer, how to learn how to do finances, like all the things that we don't learn in traditional education that are super important in life skills. And where to learn those from a valuable source that'll teach you how to be, hey, this is aligned with you, a servant leader.
I love it. I also want you to share, I have a note here. We were talking about people having professional goals and personal goals, and managers sometimes struggle with how do you coach somebody that has a personal goal that has absolutely nothing to do with your business. And when I was sharing that with you, you had this incredible story that I would love if you would grace our audience with that. And so you can tell about as much as you want.
Sure. So I started my leadership journey as a restaurant general manager. And in that role, I hired, trained, and developed, thousands of people and made hundreds of managers. And what I realized was that I'd get better results out of my people, even in my restaurant, if I really built them for their life. And let's face it, how many people go, you know what, when I want to grow up, I want to be a line cook at a minimum wage job?
Forever. That's all they dream of. Yeah. No, not many.
I'm pretty sure I've never heard anybody with that goal. Most people will go, I want to be a sous chef or something, or I want to be Gordon Ramsay. So what I had was a bunch of people who weren't living out their passion, who weren't pursuing their goals. And I still had to get them to see it as a stepping stone, as a building block. So the story that you're talking about, my favorite question in an interview is always, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the story that I shared with you, the young lady said she wanted to be a firefighter. I said, that's fantastic. As soon as you go down to the fire station and figure out what it's going to take to become a firefighter, come back and I'll hire you.
I love that first of all was like part of the interview. You're like, great, go find out what that job is. Even though I'm interviewing for a different job, that was part of the process. Okay.
So she comes back and she tells me all the qualifications and the characteristics of a firefighter. So I was like, okay, qualifications I can't necessarily help with because I don't have the formal training. Characteristics I can build. At the time I was running a pizza restaurant and she would be on the line, and I utilized that as a conversation in integrity. So we have a medium pizza that has 28 pepperonis on it. I'm not going to count them. The customer's not going to count them. Customer doesn't even know how many are supposed to be on there. You're going to count them. And every pizza you put in the oven is going to have 28 pepperonis. But here's why. Because nobody's checking in on you. You're building the muscle of integrity. Now, imagine that you're in a home that's going up ablaze, and it's your job to go save a life or to save the life of one of your comrades. How critical do you think integrity is in that moment? When you start training and developing that muscle in an activity that's not life or death, that's not a high stress environment, it becomes your go-to skill and you'll do it naturally. So we're going to train it here where it's not as critical so that when it matters, it's already part of who you are. And you know what? I had some really pretty pizzas coming out of that oven. But more importantly, I was building a firefighter.
I want to go a little deeper in that because I love that story. When you told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I think that there are probably managers listening to this interview and now trying to think through, okay, so I have someone that works for me who, first of all, kind of even struggles to share like what their personal goals are, or is maybe even hesitant to like be able to pull that information out of somebody. But if they get that information out and that person says, I want to be a blogger, I want to be a writer, I want to be a whatever, that has absolutely no relation to their business, how would you advise or coach somebody to do what you did? What are some of the exercises or some of the things that you did with your employees to help set them up for success?
Sure. So I don't train them on the skill. I train them on the characteristics of the outcome of that persona. So integrity is in everything. The desire to do something. Consistency is the greatest tool of success. You want to be successful? Great. Do 95% of success is boring. It's the mundane tasks that we do day in and day out and day in and day out. 5% of it's super exciting. And everybody thinks it's the 5%. It's like, no, here's how you get to where you want to go is you do the repetitive, boring tasks and you find a way to motivate yourself and get excited about those tasks because of what they will create. So I look at honesty. Leadership is in most of them. Communication. How do you communicate interpersonally? How do you communicate in your own mind to yourself? How do you build your self-worth internally instead of externally? How do you build that intrinsic motivation? It's a cheat. Everybody wants the same internal stuff. The external stuff is the outcome. So knowing that she wanted to be a firefighter, I was able to adapt how to make pizzas relate to firefighting specifically. But she could have wanted to be a painter.
Sure.
And I could have said, the integrity of making a pizza will relate to the integrity of the outcome of your artwork.
So was that employee coming to you and saying, so the characteristics are integrity, good relationships? You were making that leap for the employee and saying, so these are characteristics that probably go with that, and getting them to agree and say, yeah, absolutely, that's what that would require.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And when you dig into the characteristics of most goals in life, everything from personal to professional goals, they all have an underlying theme. Integrity is critical for everything. It's one of my go-tos. Being a good person. How do you be perceptive on what other people need? And training them in those areas gives them access to anything they want in life. When you look at foundational fundamentals, they're all the same.
Mm-hmm. You said also that you trained and created, I think you said, I made a lot of managers. What did you find to be the hardest part in taking somebody from an individual contributor to becoming a manager?
So I had a secret there too. I only hired managers. Meaning.
Oh, speak more about that.
Yes. So in the interview, I wouldn't hire a line cook. I would hire a potential manager. So I was always looking for management characteristics in every interview, regardless of their chosen career path. I only hired future managers. If they wanted to be a leader, what was their goals in life? When you start asking, who do you want to be when you grow up? If they say, I want to be a person that sits in my room and plays video games all day, that's not a future manager. But somebody who says, I want to help people, making a difference for others is a cue for me for potential manager. I look for previous situations. Tell me about a time when you were in a stressful situation. How did you overcome it? Those kinds of conversations, very open-ended about their past and about what do you think you could have done better. I look for coachability. So basically, instead of sitting down and going, I'm hiring a line cook, I go, if I'm putting somebody in charge of my store, who's going to get that position? And then I interview based on that context versus you're going to make pizzas.
How do you describe someone that's coachable? Because I think we talk about that a lot. I think it's super important. And I also believe that many people believe they are coachable, but they actually are not. And so I'd be curious for you to describe, what does coachability look like in a leader?
For me, coachability is willing to have an open dialogue and be willing to try new things, even if it's against their beliefs, perspectives. As long as they're moral and ethical, then yeah, give it a shot. And what I say is try it on like a t-shirt. If you don't like it, take it off later, but at least give it a shot.
Yeah. Oh, I like that metaphor. That's good.
I find a lot of coachability actually comes from how it's delivered when you need them to be coachable. So it's not always their job, it's also ours. So how do I get somebody to be coachable? Well, don't put them on the defense. Don't attack. Create a space of safety where they can communicate anything and authenticity and make it okay. Okay, I get it. I understand why you'd feel that way. Now, how do we get from here to there? How do we create teamwork versus I need you to do something I need you to do? It's how do we do this together?
Yeah. And I think consistency goes with that too. I think too often managers aren't consistent in their behavior. And when you're not consistent, it makes it really hard for someone to recognize that you have good intent. It makes it really hard for someone to recognize your trustworthiness. If you have one time where you go really deep and I want you to be vulnerable, I want to give you some feedback that's really going to help you grow. And then the next time you're like, that was horrible. Oh my gosh, right? And you're just like, don't get, or you don't give them feedback for like another 3 months. And they're like, I don't, why should I believe you? Right.
Yeah, leadership is critical. I remember one time, it's funny that we're going back to the restaurant days so much, but there was so many good pieces to pull from that. I was sitting in a management meeting and I said, how much of a difference do you guys think that you make? And they're like, I don't know. I go, okay. I want you to observe something. And I had my entire crew follow me, or my entire management team follow me. And I had a line cook on the line and I walked through and I'm all bouncy and happy. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? Da, da, da. And literally her shoulders came up and she smiled and she's happy. And then I come back through, I go, hey, there's cheese on the floor. Go ahead and clean that up. And make sure your make table's clean too. We're in slow time. What's going on? And you could physically see her just collapse. And then I came back through and I was all happy and bouncy again. And she lifted back up again. And I went back out to my management team. I said, what did you observe? They're like, the way that you were with her shifted her. And it was so extreme from happy to like crushing her. And I didn't stage it with her or anything else. She had no idea what was happening or what was going on. So it was really cool. It was a really cool experience.
So I know you work with a lot of different business owners and you work with tons of different industries. I mean, you've got experience in the restaurant, real estate's kind of your jam. So you help many types of business owners in different organizations, large, small, to work in their business better. But I'm curious, what key principles do you prioritize when coaching others to become more effective influencers in their respective fields?
Communication in people is like, if you nail those two things, everything else will take care of itself. You got to take care of your people. You have to know your people, and you've got to be able to communicate in a way that puts them in a position of wanting to support you or support themselves and vicariously supporting you through their own personal goals. But you can't help them get where they're going if you don't know where they're going. And they don't want to help you if you don't want to support them. So it's building the relationship and knowing how to communicate in a way that matters to them. And if you take care of them, they'll take care of you every time.
When you've worked with business owners and you think specifically about communication skills, where do you see the biggest gaps? Where are people in general kind of struggling as business leaders with regards to communication?
I would say that they're talking down or telling people what to do is the biggest challenge our business owners have, or most leaders have, is the old paradigm model of manufacturing or industrial when you go in and the boss is, and I mean, even like military, boss says X, you do X, but we don't have those people anymore. Our generations are not trained like that. We're seeking for so much more inside of our work and fulfillment and the difference that we make, where it's not, hey, I'm going to come here and do what you tell me to do, get a paycheck, go home. It's, hey, I'm coming here because this is where I spend the majority of my life. And I want to enjoy while I'm here, make a difference while I'm here. And if you take that persona and go, okay, do X, Y, and Z, they're going to look at you and go, no. But if you go, hey, what are you up to? Great. Here's how I'm going to help you get there. And here's how we can apply that to X, Y, and Z. And here's what I'm looking for in X, Y, and Z. Here's how I can grow you inside of the tasks that we're doing that make a difference here, but will also make a difference in your home life, in your relationships, in your future. I don't ever think that anybody's going to work for me forever. So far, nobody has. So my goal is not to keep them. It's to build them to outgrow me. If I've built them to outgrow me and I can look where they're at and go, I had a piece of that, that's my goal.
I agree with that. And I think that's wonderful. In this environment where talent feels like it's so competitive right now, I feel like there's lots of business owners that understand that, but the actual execution of that, they're like, I don't have time. I want to keep all my people because they know us. I don't want them to leave me. I don't want to put all this time in and have them leave me. So how do you balance that?
If you take care of them and they're fulfilled, they won't. If they belong there, they will stay. If they don't, stop holding on to them. It's a disservice to both. It's like being in a bad relationship. You know you're in a bad relationship or a comfortable one, but it's not what you want. And it's good enough for now, but you're not just harming yourself staying there. You're harming the person that's there as well. Know when to let go. Make sure that you support them and build them. And yeah, it's hard. It takes time and energy and money to hire and train. But when we hold on to them, we're hurting ourselves, we're hurting our clients, we're hurting our business, and we're hurting our people.
Yeah.
They aren't ours. We get the benefit of who they are for the time that they choose to spend with us. And it is our duty to grow them while they're under our wings and then to congratulate them when they elevate to the next level. Now, I will tell you, when people tried to leave me for something lower, that's when I fought for them. I don't understand how that's going to get you where you want to go. If you can explain it to me, I'll support you. Or if it was a money conversation, I'm like, okay, I get it. They pay more. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to reduce your schedule down so you still get real training here for your life and you get the money over there. But I'm not okay with you just leaving. And if you go over there, what if you hate it? But if you drop down to 1 day a week here, you go over there, figure out what you like. And then if you hate it, come back, I'll put you back on full schedule. So I always tried to find, how do I support them to go test their theories? And then I wouldn't lose them. And a lot of times they'd come back and promote under me. Like, you were right. They paid more, but I hated it.
That's so good. I love that's so creative too. How do you navigate in your role as a business advisor that balance between encouraging authenticity in the clients that you're also trying to influence and helping them refine their approach for maximum impact?
That one's easy. You ready?
I'm ready.
People are created through a space of acknowledgement. When you tell them what they're doing right, they'll continue to do it. When you tell them what they're doing wrong, they'll resist it or they'll repeat it. So what I do is I make sure to go, hey, this is where you're doing really well. Keep focusing on this. And we only have so much time and energy. If we focus more time and energy on the things that are going right, the things that aren't going so well will start shifting off. Now, will I pull attention to those items if they're critical? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not a, let me congratulate you and give you a participation trophy because you showed up kind of person. I'm more of a, hey, this works really well. How do we get more of that? Hey, this isn't working so well. How do we decrease that? How do we shift it or tip the balance? But I'm not someone who's going to go, hey, you can't do that. Like, it's your business. You can do whatever you want to do. We have this cool thing called free will. It will get us in trouble, but it will also create miracles. And I'm not the greatest authority, which means just because I have a belief or perspective doesn't make it right. Just means in my experience, this is what's been true. And they might have an experience that's outside of mine that shows me a better way. So it's also an opportunity for me to learn and grow. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. I'm totally stealing that.
I love that. So much of your approach, I think, is focused on servant leadership, just in the businesses that you worked with, but even your approach and even the way you talk about this is all about serving others, not serving yourself, serving others. So how do you define servant leadership? And how do you think that that differs from other types of leadership models?
I would say it's taking care of your people so they take care of you and making sure your aces are in their places, making sure that you're giving them the opportunity to succeed. As a servant leader, I feel it's my duty to make sure that they have every opportunity to grow and succeed and become who they want to be. So it's more of a context that I look at everything through. So I have a conversation where there's leadership versus management. And management is task-oriented and whether or not you fulfilled. And now even in servant leadership, I still have KPIs, I still have measures, I still have goals, I still have all those natural business items. Like, it's not kumbaya, let's all sing around a circle and hope it gets done. It's we're driving towards a result. And my results are not small. I want 100% year-over-year growth, not 8. I want a profit of 20%, not 2. I want massive results. And I get massive results every time because I'm not the one doing it. The team is doing it because we've chosen together to create this thing together. As a manager, you're driving the results, trying to get people to perform, to produce an outcome because you told them to. And you can get them that way, but they won't be as big, they won't be as fun, and they won't be as celebratory. And I think leadership in and of itself is servant. I don't know if you can have leadership without servant. You can have management.
Yes, I talk about management's an authority relationship, and we need those relationships, right? But leadership is an influence relationship. So I'd like you to share just a little bit more about your background. So can you share an example of how you've applied servant leadership principles in your own organization and even working with your clients?
So here's one I haven't talked about a lot. I had I still have this company. It's called Superior Renovated Homes, where we flip a lot of properties. So we buy a lot of foreclosures. And the hardest part of foreclosures is that there's always a story of why that home went into foreclosure. Again, never anybody's goal. So in a flipping business, one of the things that's really critical is the number of days that you hold it because you're paying holding costs. So you really want to speed up your timeline. I'll share a story with one day we bought a foreclosure. We went to the guy's house, knocked on his door. He opened it and he was this really big biker kind of guy. Like, okay, this isn't scary at all because I can fight, but it still scares me. I'm still, 5'4", 120 pounds. Like this guy's going to destroy me if it. So anyways, we go in and I'm like nervous and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And he starts telling us his story. He has stage 4 cancer. He spent the last 20 years in prison, got out 2 years before, got his life in order, got this house, has or maybe 3 years because he had a 1.5-year-old son. And he was dying. He couldn't make the bills, couldn't go to work. Holy cow. And I got to evict this guy and rehab this house and sell it. So there were still criteria that I had to fulfill on a business side. Now, I have multiple options of how to fulfill that. I can kick the guy out. I can give him a notice. I can evict him. I can all these things, right? So what I actually did was had a conversation with him and said, listen, that's heartbreaking. And I'm still running a business. So how do we work together? How do I support you? Can I get you a moving truck? Can I get people to help us actually move your stuff? What's your plans? How do we do this? How do we work with you to support you to get to your next step? And it's not because I don't care. I ended up leaving that meeting that day. My right-hand man was with me, and we went up to a place called Palmer Park, and we went up there, and it's like this beautiful, like an overlook over nature, and it's just absolutely stunning. And we're sitting there, and we just went up there, and we just cried. We just cried for this gentleman. To answer your question, servant leadership is in every action I take with every human I interact with, whether it's a client, whether it's somebody where I just purchased their home, whether it's somebody who works for me, if it's a vendor out in the world. My rule with vendors is if they believe I owe them money, I write a check, regardless of whether or not I agree. If I disagree, I won't hire them again. That's it. That's my rule. But if you believe I owed it to you, I'm writing the check. We're not fighting over it. I'm fulfilling your belief, period.
Powerful story, Amy. Thanks for sharing. If anyone listening wants to get in touch with you, wants you to come help advise them, help them maximize their business, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I'd say go to the website realestatebusinessadvisor.com.
Amy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your stories. And I didn't talk about your Taekwondo. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I think it's just kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as a kid, I always wanted to do Taekwondo, but my mom was a single mom. We didn't really have the money. It's kind of an expensive sport. So I was in a seminar and they're like talking about how you can't blame your parents anymore. I'm like, wait, I'm 24 years old. It's not my mom's fault anymore. I've been a whole adult for 6 years. If I want to do Taekwondo, I need to shut up and go to Taekwondo. So I did. And I'm now a 3rd degree black belt. I'm on our international competition team. We are traveling to Korea in 2 months to go compete in Worlds against the Koreans from America, which is awesome and fun. Last time we went to Worlds, we took 2nd. So our goal is 1st place this round. My daughter is on the team with me. My son isn't quite old enough yet, but he is on the junior team. And our next goal is we're hoping they put demo teams in the 2028 Olympics because that's our next destination. So not bad for a young lady in her youthful 40s to be able to throw people and fly through the air and do a lot of kicks, break some boards.
I love the advice. I love the advice of, I've been an adult for 6 years now. I have to own this now. That is amazing.
Some point in time, it's no longer mom and dad's fault. I think it was like never mom and dad's fault. It's just the story that we tell ourselves. If you can find responsibility, and here's how I define responsibility. There's something you could have done or could have not done that would have yielded a different result, which applies to 100% of everything, which means if you're really willing to take it on, you're never, ever a victim. And in a position of responsibility, there's power to make a difference. In the position of being a victim, there's no power. You're at the impact of something that's outside of your control. And if you're a victim, you can't do anything about it. But in responsibility, you can do everything about it.
I love it. Amy, thanks so much for being with us. I so appreciate you. And I definitely will follow up to hear how your competition went in Korea. Oh, what a great interview. I really loved what Amy said about increasing more of what's working and decreasing what isn't. I love what she said about people growing as a matter of acknowledging what's working, what they're doing well, which just speaks right into highlighting people's strengths. And I loved her definition of responsibility. I thought that was very thoughtful, and I hope that also resonated with you too. Are you loving the show and the content? I sure hope so. Take a moment right now and share what you liked best. Give us a few stars. I mentioned I'm trying to get more reviews of the show so that I can entice more guests to come to our show. If you loved it, I'd love it if you'd leave a comment, give us a few stars, share it with others, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a rating and a review. I'd love it if you'd let me know what resonated with you and tell us how we're making an impact on your life. We want to grow the audience and we want to connect with leaders just like you. In the meantime, I want you to remember that you are made for impact.